Hi friend, I'm Waijia and this is Dream Brave. Welcome to this great adventure. Without risk, there is no need for faith. Yet, so many of us hold back because the cost of saying yes seems too great. We forget that what we desperately hold on to is an illusion. And the enchantment of security always lulls us into taking risks every day for ourselves while being immune to the call of risk-taking love on the Calvary road of Christ. In this special season on risk, I interview ordinary Christians who've gone out on a limb to take extraordinary risks for God. My hope is that these stories will encourage you to put all you are on the line to obey God's call for your life. As you remember that thousands of decisions we make every day put us closer to the cliff's edge than the occasion clarion call to obey God. May these stories change your perception of risk-taking and empower you to recalibrate risk, so you might, by faith, wisely take the risks He presents, so you may be thrust forth into the adventure He has waiting for you. If God has called you, then no matter what the cost, the risk will always be worth it. Friends, today I'm so excited to introduce a woman whose story beautifully reflects brave obedience. Fock Ee-Ling is a friend, but also she's an amazing mother of 3, including a teenager and 12-year-old twins, as well as the founder of The Missing Piece, a beloved homegrown Singaporean fashion label that champions versatility, confidence, and community. In 2011, Ee-Ling made the bold decision to resign from her corporate role at Johnson & Johnson to be a stay-at-home mom. And what she didn't know at the time was that this would mark the beginning of an entirely new journey, one that would involve building a thriving fashion business from scratch, without formal training in fashion or business, and learning to trust God's leading at every step of the way. In this episode, Ee-Ling shares what it means to surrender control, follow her creative instincts, and allow her faith to shape the way she leads, not just at home, but in the marketplace. From humble beginnings to helming one of Singapore's most heartfelt and respected fashion brands, this conversation is a powerful reminder that when we dare to take risks for God, He meets us with more than we imagined. Ee-Ling, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Ee-Ling, you know what I love about you? I feel it's so special because we're having this conversation from Tanzania to Singapore, but there's such a youthfulness about you. You're doing so much, and yet there's such a freshness. Where does this come from?
I must tell you that it's not easy. It's not easy. I think that sometimes it just looks like I'm very fresh, but I'm not always the freshest. But I think it does have a lot to do with perspective. And I think every day when I wake up, I always have to make sure that straight away, the minute I open my eyes, I pray actually. Because I think a lot of how I face the day, and when I face people, it can depend a lot on how I'm feeling at that time,
Right.
or whether I'm really tired or maybe I'm stressed. But I pray every day that God will give me the right perspective, and that no matter what the day brings me, I will be able to handle it with grace.
Wow. So is
Yeah.
that what you pray in the morning? God, give me the
I
right
do.
perspective?
Yes,
Wow.
yeah. So in the morning when
That
I
is
wake up, when
powerful.
I first wake up, be God, please give me the right perspective. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I need that. I need that in the mission field. I need that when I go back to Singapore.
Every day, we all need it. We all need it.
Yeah. But tell us, Ee-Ling, about the moment, you first sensed God inviting you to take a risk. I know, yours is a story that enraptures so many because you were on this path. Were you doing a PhD in medicine?
Yeah, so
And
I did get
yeah.
so after my undergraduate, I went straight and did my PhD in medicine, and then I got that in 4 years, and then I worked a little bit in research. And subsequently, when I moved back to Singapore, then I joined Johnson & Johnson in their medical affairs department.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is I feel like it's a very left-brained, supercharged kind of
Yes, it is. I studied for many years. I studied science for many years.
Wow. And how did you make that shift towards fashion? I mean, it's so different. And it
Yeah.
started off small, right?
It did. I mean, it was a very gradual thing. And in fact, I would say that, one of the biggest risks I took was probably not starting my fashion business. I think that was a very organic, very slow churn thing. But one of the biggest risks that I took was probably leaving my corporate job and wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. So I think that's actually where the journey first began. And I think that was also, from young when I was my mom was bringing up. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and as we were growing up, she always instilled with us that like when you're a mom, it's a special calling, and that you will be at home, and you will look after your own kids and bring them up because that is a full-time job. So I
Wow.
think since I was young, I was prepared. Like I wanted to be a mom, and I sort of knew that when I become a mother, I am going to be a stay-at-home mom, just like my mother. So I think my mom set a very good, like she was a very good role model for me in that sense. So when I
Wow.
found out I was pregnant with my first child, I straight away, sort of told my boss that, I'm pregnant, and like, I'm not sure like if I can continue working after this. And
Wow.
she was she's also a mom herself. So she's like, no, we can make this work, why don't you try part-time? She was very, very good. Like I had a great boss.
Wow.
And so we did try part-time for a while. But after a while, I just said that I still felt that I wanted to stay at home and just focus on that.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that was in that point in time was an easy decision because it's a decision that I knew I was going to make since I was young. But living it out as a stay-at-home mom for 4 years was the toughest thing I've ever done. I
Oh
still
my
say,
goodness.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like PhD is so easy,
I can
like
relate.
working so
Yeah.
easy. But
Yeah.
every time I meet, a stay-home mom now, even now, I always tell them that you are doing the hardest job. Like I have a lot of respect, for
Wow.
moms who can able to stay home, and look after their kids. And I think it was during this period where I was very sleep deprived. I mean, I had 3 toddlers under the age of 2,
Right.
and nobody was sleeping. I was so tired. But I started picking up an old hobby of mine, right? So when I was in
Right.
university, I actually loved to sew. I used to love to source for fabric. I've always loved going to a fabric
Wow.
shop. I could stay in a fabric
Wow.
shop for hours and just like look through fabric. And so when I
Wow.
was, at home, I needed a creative outlet just to sort of do something for myself. And so
Yeah.
at night, after I put the kids down, if I had some time, I started, to like, go online, look for like, nice fabrics or American fabrics. And then when it arrived, I'll get some simple patterns that I could do. And then I started sewing clothes for my kids. Then I thought, this would be so cute if we had, like matching outfit for
Yeah.
Chinese New Year. So I started making a
Mm-hmm.
cheongsam for myself or a cheongsam top for myself. And
Right.
then I started getting it made into like a family set for Chinese New Year for my family. And then
Right.
so at that point in time, I think there were very few brands that were doing like coordinated clothing for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
like family and friends were asking like, oh, where'd you get your clothes from? So nice, and it's all like so nicely
Wow.
coordinated.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I just made it myself. And they're like, oh, can you make for me also? And I'm just like, make for you also. And I thought, oh, and I remember it was a very spur of the moment thing. Like, I was just like, okay lah. So I just put together this very, very amateur PowerPoint lookbook of
So
like just
cute.
selected, yeah, it was like very amateur, selected fabrics that I had curated, from the US, and then in very simple silhouettes that I
Wow.
knew I could just get easily made. And I
Right.
started to take orders from like family and friends. I sent that lookbook to like on Facebook Messenger to just like my friends and family. I said, oh no, this is like
Wow.
no obligations, but if you're interested, I can also help you make lah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the response was much better than I expected. And
Wow.
then after that first collection, people started asking, like, hey, can you do like Chinese New Year just around the corner? Can you do some more like more cheongsams? Then I thought, okay, I'm just
Wow.
gonna just do it lah. So I
Yeah.
rushed and I put together like another small little collection of cheongsams
Right.
for the mummies. And then yeah, from then on, I started doing small little collections just as and when I wanted. Like it was very like hobby. It was a
That
creative outlet.
that is incredible, Ee-Ling. That is
Yeah.
incredible. And it's so funny that you actually mentioned that your heart was really for being a stay-at-home mom, but
Mm,
also your heart went out to stay-at-home moms. And it's really
mm,
incredible that,
mm,
the missing piece has birthed into what it is today. Because I
mm,
remember how you had told me before, or I think I had
mm,
read somewhere as well, that I think one of your heart's mission is really to dress women with
mm,
elegance and beauty
mm.
and joy.
Yep.
And actually, I haven't explained to our listeners like how we met, how we connected. What happened was that there was one year I was inspired to do a calligraphy exhibition, and this was something I had not taken up in like 20 years of my life because it actually represented a lot of fear in me. And so for me to take it up and then to do fundraising with it, my PA at the time, who is now, I believe, working for you,
Best
she said,
recommendation.
yeah, oh, I'm so glad. So I remember she said, Waicha, you have to check out the missing piece because for, something as sophisticated as Chinese calligraphy, you need a matching outfit. And, I am the kind of woman, like, I can wear black all day, like every day. As I am wearing black, it's the same dress that I've been wearing, forever. And it's so funny that after all these years of being married, Cliff is still the one who chooses my clothes. So, so I have no eye for fashion or dressing or shopping or anything like that. And I remember when I saw your clothes, I thought to myself, wow, this is so different. There's something so elegant and beautiful about it. And I had such a magical experience in your store, Ee-Ling, because when I walked in, I just felt so loved. Like your staff who welcomed me, like when I was trying on the outfit, when I went in, I really went in like a stay-at-home mom. I was in shorts, I was in a tank top. My kids were all over the shop trying to touch and feel everything. I'm so sorry.
No
And
worries, man.
I was such a mess. And yet your staff welcomed me. They treated me as if I had money to spend. And actually, to be honest, Ee-Ling, I felt like I did not have money to spend on a jumpsuit or an outfit like that. But the moment I put on your pink jumpsuit, that was the first time, the fuchsia jumpsuit that has been like one of my signature looks, Cliff actually said, oh my goodness. He said, I know you won't get it, so I'm going to get it for you now. So while I was changing out of it, he was already paying for it. And actually, when I left home, I felt so guilty because I don't like to spend money on myself. And when I reached home, 2 days later, we had an overseas guest in our home. And this overseas guest was so kind to us. She actually gave us a love gift. She gave us a Chinese red packet. But the Chinese red packet wasn't red. It was in the exact color of the jumpsuit, which is a very odd fuchsia color. And there was a word man on it, which means overflow. And inside that red packet was a bit more than what the jumpsuit had cost. And I felt God telling me, I will always provide enough for what you need. And so since then, I have looked at clothes, especially your clothes, the clothes that you create, with such a different feeling. And I think that's why I wanted to invite you so much to share your story, because you're not just like a fashion brand, but you really started with a heart, and it has gone on to bless women like myself. When I put on your jumpsuit, I feel like I'm a different person, when I go on stage, when I share, when I speak God's word, when I go and perform, when I write my calligraphy, I'm like a different person altogether.
Oh, I love that. I mean, and that video that you shot in the calligraphy in the jumpsuit was so beautiful. It was really, it was such a nice video. And I love that was the experience that you got when you came into our store. Because I think that, to me, that is really important. And I think actually the success of the brand is really because like the team and the staff are there to really genuinely make relationship, to form relationships with our customers. And to me, I think that's always been something very special about the missing piece. And I love that we have so many women who come in and, very similar to you, they are transformed. Like the way they dress is like transformed after they've discovered our brand. And I that gets me so happy.
Yeah, I think it's it's a ministry. Like people think of fashion as something like very unspiritual, but it's a ministry when you clothe a woman with strength and dignity, and they see themselves so differently. I'm like, wow, that's such a deep, deep thing that you do for a woman. But Ee-Ling, tell us about how that hobby, right, actually took the leap from hobby to actually an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah, so I think, I mentioned like I was doing just small little collections as I wanted. It was something that brought me a lot of joy, and it was really a creative outlet. And I think it was, there was one time I thought, oh, I'm going to join a kids fair. Because at that point in time, I was still mainly doing like kids clothing and like coordinated clothing for the whole family. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to join this kids fair just for fun. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to design a cheongsam. So at that point in time, I was really playing with like cheongsam ideas. And that was the first time I came up with our signature cutout cheongsam. So we had this one cheongsam that was just a prototype at that point in time. And I put it on the mannequin at this kids fair just to go with the kids' clothes. to show that it could be like a family set. And there was
Right.
only this one cheongsam piece on that mannequin. And I think
Right.
at that fair, at that point in time, Jin Lee, who's like, the organizer of Singapore Fashion Week, was also at that same
Wow.
fair because she had a children's brand. And she was walking
Ah.
around and she spotted this cheongsam on the mannequin. And she's like, oh, can I try it? And
Right.
at that point in time, my friend was helping me man the store. I wasn't there.
Right.
And apparently it fit her like perfectly. And she
Wow.
actually went home, like, with the dress. And the very next day, I think she wore it to an event and posted on
Mm.
Instagram. And that's
Wow.
when, like, all of a sudden, I mean, when Jim posts something, it's like, whoa, it blew up so fast.
Right.
And subsequently, we did more fairs, which were primarily women's wear focused. And we did more cheongsams rather than the kids' clothes.
Right.
And I think the business sort of slowly grew from there once we started to specialize in women's wear. So I think quite fast we
Wow.
discovered that was our strength. And I think
Mm.
as the business grew organically, at that point in time, I started holding more stock in my house.
Wow.
People would come to my house to try in
Yeah.
the bathroom, and then I'll
Wow, so
serve them in my
cute.
living room. Yeah, so we worked out of my
Oh.
house for a while, for quite a while. And I think it did come to a point where like it was making like from the start, with the
Right.
business was profitable and was like at first I thought like just like a bit of pocket money for myself. It was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
And then I think it just continued to grow, and then the collections, whatever I made, I would put into the next collection. And so from
Wow.
there, the collection started to get a little bit bigger, a little bit
Mhm.
bigger, until a certain point where I was like, okay, this is like getting a bit hard for me to handle by myself. I
Right.
was packing orders at night,
Oh,
handling the
wow.
production. My kids were still very young. And
So
so I
you are
felt,
literally
okay.
a stay-at-home mom, but with a
Yes,
job.
yes, yes. Yes, I was
Yeah,
literally a
working from
stay-at-home mom,
home.
working from home in my living
Yeah.
room and working
Yeah.
around my kids. Um,
Wow.
I was doing that for actually, I mean, maybe 2 years at least. I think maybe at
Wow.
least 2 years, and then I
Mhm.
hired my first intern. And I think that's when
Wow.
I hired my first intern. That's when I
Mhm.
stopped to think like, okay, this is getting real, and this is getting taking up more of my time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I'm that kind of person also. When I do something, I don't want to do it half-heartedly, right?
Oh, I can
So
tell. Yeah.
yeah. So I think I sat down and I spoke to my husband about it. I said, oh, it's getting a
Yeah.
bit it's getting more work, and so I
Yeah.
think we have to make a decision whether this is something that I really want to pursue or whether it's something that we just want to keep it more as a hobby. And my husband's like, just give it a shot, nah. So we
Wow.
applied to do we did boutiques fair.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I think we did very well at boutiques fair, and it
Wow.
just organically started to grow from there. I started to hire more help, and the rest is history. And then it's
Wow.
been, yeah.
Ee-Ling, as you shared, there are a couple of things that are making me smile. There are some
Mm.
things that I really, really love about your story. The first thing is that when you said, I didn't know this about you, that you were hosting people in your living room. But now when I think about it, I was smiling because that is exactly how a person feels when they walk into your shop. It doesn't
Mm.
feel like a shop. It feels like I'm walking into a
Yes.
home.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly when I designed my studio at Cluny. I actually
Yeah.
wanted it was supposed to be an extension of my home. I
Wow,
wanted it to be an extension of my
it
home.
is
And anyone who steps
beautiful.
in would feel that like they're just in their own
Yeah.
rooms or in their own house, and they can shop in
Yeah.
comfort, be totally, just catching up with friends, and it's a very, very cozy atmosphere.
I absolutely think it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, that was the first thought I had. Now the second thought I had was that I love how okay, so your husband and my husband, I think they're the ones who really push us out of our comfort zones, right? But he's
Mm,
so
mm,
supportive. And the third
mm,
thing that I really like about your story is how you start small. I think there's such a
mm.
humility
Yeah.
about you, Ee-Ling, even up to today. Like, no matter what you do, I can see that you put such a spirit of excellence. It's like
Mm,
all in, and yet at the
mm,
same time, you are not you are dreaming big. Like where
mm,
the missing piece and even your second shop are POV
mm,
right now. I mean, it has blossomed and borne so much fruit, and yet you've always been so humble to start small. Because I think
mm,
the
mm.
mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is expanding too fast,
Yeah.
too much, and yet
Mm,
you have never done that. Like you've always started small, stayed humble, and
mm,
I love the word that you keep using, which is organic. Like I
mm.
know you
Yeah.
told me before that you've never really pumped in like thousands of money
Yeah.
for your social
Marketing,
media.
no. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everything has been
Yeah.
so organic and people
Mm,
just hear about your brand. And I think it
mm.
really exudes the humility that you have. It's just who you are, you know?
No, I'm just conservative. I'm a conservative person.
No, this is really funny because when other people look at you, when I look at you, I think, wow, you are a risk taker. But now here you are sharing with us that you're very conservative. Can you help us
I am.
unpack a little bit of that paradox?
Yeah, no, so I mean, actually, if you were to describe me as a risk taker, I would probably stop and wonder, am I a risk taker? I'm not sure. But I've always seen myself as maybe in certain things I'm quite conservative. I think in most things I'm quite conservative. I
Right.
don't really take very big risks. I always take
Mhm.
calculated risks, which I feel I can still manage.
Okay.
And I think in a way, I always joke with other entrepreneurs, my entrepreneur friends always joke that like I'm actually very unambitious. I'm not ambitious at all when it comes to being a businesswoman. In that sense, I'm a very bad
Oh,
businesswoman because I'm not the type who like, I've never had dreams of like, scaling really big, or making it into like, all the malls, or growing the missing piece to like, this global brand. It's never been
yeah.
something that I've wanted. I've always said, oh no,
Wow.
I'm actually very, very content at how the business is at the moment, how it's grown over the years. It's exceeded my expectations. And
Yeah.
I said I always want to keep it, in a position where I can still sort of manage it. It
Yeah.
doesn't, it works for my family still, and it's not
Right.
a business which my family has to work around, but it's, it can still stay at a size which works around my family. I think for me, that's always been still the top priority. And I think that has always kept me grounded, or kept me from taking too big of a risk, because I always ask myself back to the question, okay, I started this business so that I could have flexibility around my family and still be able to be
Yeah.
there for my kids. So
Yeah.
if I'm going to make this decision, or if I'm going to do this, explore this opportunity, um, then am I going to compromise that? And straight away, if it's going to
Wow.
compromise that, I would probably say no, like straight away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I love this so much, Ee-Ling. So what
Mm.
what you're speaking to so many of us is actually this idea of values.
Mm.
And you have always placed the value of family first.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it would be looking at your success outside, it would be impossible to fathom this, Ee-Ling. Because I think
Mm.
people would look at you and think, this woman has big dreams, she's a risk taker,
Mm.
she's climbing,
Mm.
she's pursuing. And yet,
Mm.
every time I meet you, you always have a story to share about how something happened organically, how this
Yeah.
influencer picked up your thing. And I can just
Mm.
see it's so God led. And it's because
Mm.
you put the right priorities first. Even just for us to get this interview, I remember you were
Mm.
telling me, oh, I need to find a time where I have nothing
Yeah.
to do with my kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was such a reminder for me, even,
Mm.
that no matter how
Mm.
busy I get or we get, that it's so important to realize what's important,
Mm. Mm.
right? Right. But
Mm.
were there ever times, Ee-Ling, where you felt like you were crunched in between the two, where you felt like, wow, both sides are costing me so much? Were there times where
Yeah.
you felt so challenged and tried?
Oh, for sure. In fact, more times than you can imagine. I'm faced with this. I think more times than you imagine. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like, International Women's Day, they always, like to talk about this, and I did talk about this at
Yeah.
length about, balancing running a business, and also, with a growing family, or,
Right.
kids who are going into teens.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. I always tell people I don't have it. I don't have it all. I don't have it all figured out. My
Mhm.
life is not, perfect. I don't have everything juggled, I'm still
Right.
juggling.
Mhm.
And I'm still figuring my way out. Every day is a constant rebalancing act. It's always
Wow.
about reprioritization. It's always about uh, I don't think there's a ideal balance all the time. So I
Yeah.
always say that, people who are struggling, they always say that there are moments where I have to prioritize my family, and then
Yeah.
I focus more on my family. And at that point in time, I'm trying to be the best mom that I can possibly be. And as a
Wow.
result, I may not be a very good boss, or I might not be a very good leader in that season.
Right. Right.
And on the flip side, when work gets a bit like, if we're running like a collection that's very big, or like Chinese New Year launch is always during the school holidays. Our Chinese New Year launch is always clashes with the school holidays. That part has always been
Oh.
very tiring, and tricky to balance, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
in those moments, I'll be like, okay, I have to spend a little bit more time, because we're going to launch, and I'll be with the team
Right.
and all that. But the kids and my husband will try, my family will come in to try and support. And in those periods, you don't feel like you're the best mom,
Right.
because you're trying to be there for the team.
Yeah.
But at any point, I'm trying to do my best, and I can only you know try to balance my time. And I think as the years go by, I'm starting to feel more comfortable about saying no, like to
Right.
certain things, or like to if it means that I don't socialize as much, or
Yeah.
I don't attend events as much as other entrepreneurs, I'm okay
Right.
with that. So I don't really
Wow.
attend many entrepreneur events or like networking events,
Wow.
because those are things which I feel it'll be great. Of course, it's good for me, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, if I can build my network, but those are the times then I'm really sacrificing my time with my kids.
I
Um,
understand.
yeah, so and then it's just every day is a balancing. Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you said about actually you use the word juggle because to
Mm.
balance everything at every point is almost
Yeah, no.
impossible. But then
Impossible, yeah.
when you're juggling, right, you're like it's like
Yes.
you can only hold one ball, right, at one time.
Yes.
But you have to keep everything
Mm.
else. And I like what you said that, there's a season that's very busy. But I'm sure there are
Mm.
other seasons where you are more intentional and more conscious with
Mm.
your kids and things like that.
Yeah.
And even in our
Yeah.
brief interactions, I've always felt
Mm.
you've been very consistent because
Mm.
the first time I actually asked you on the podcast was probably about a year ago. And I think
Mm.
you were very busy then. You were starting your
Mm.
second shop. And
Stop.
then
Mm.
you actually said no. You said
Mm.
not
Yeah.
now, but maybe later.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
I'm just sharing this because it's so powerful to me that you are
Mm.
consistent with what you say,
Mm. I mean,
right?
I wish I could do it all, but I know
No
my
one
own,
can.
like, no, I know my own capacity and my
Yeah,
limitations is
for sure.
yeah.
And
So
that's humility, right? That's
mm,
humility.
mm,
But also, Ee-Ling, as you had taken this risk, right, to start the missing piece, with every risk, there is always a cost. Because you talked
mm,
about, managing the sacrifices and how you try your very best not to sacrifice your family. Because you remind yourself
mm,
that this was why you came into this, right? Because it
yeah,
offered you the flexibility.
yeah.
And yet, in taking this risk, I guess my question is, what has it cost you the most?
Mm. I think that what has cost me the most is probably the first word that came to mind was sleep.
Ah, self
It, co- it,
care,
yeah, self care. Definitely, I think self care has definitely taken a backseat
right?
for many years
Mm-hmm,
probably, and I think also I have to be very conscious now about my mental state, and
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
making sure that I don't let because there's so many things that are on my to-do list every day,
for
um
sure.
and then dealing with the team and dealing with the kids at home,
Yeah.
quite similar sometimes, and it gets a bit much, and I would say I'm not always the most peaceful person. So I think it it has cost me probably a peaceful state. I think I could be, uh, more rested, more restful, and more at peace,
Right.
if I wasn't trying to juggle both so much. Yeah. So sometimes I actually
Understand.
really envy those who are, have a 9 to 5 job sometimes, because, you work 9 to 5, you go
I
home
hear
and it's a
you.
very clean cut.
Yeah.
But I think when you run your own business, it's very
It's
uh,
yours. It's your
it's
baby.
yours, and you're
Yeah,
constantly it's
for
very hard to
sure.
switch off. You're
Oh,
constantly
I
working.
understand.
Most entrepreneurs are working until really late at night
Yeah,
after the kids have gone to bed.
I
Um,
get it.
yeah, so it's nonstop. Your brain is like nonstop
Yeah,
churning. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I totally get it because, yeah,
Mm,
but back when we met, I was running kite song in
mm,
Singapore as well. So just sleeplessness is like how a mom,
mm.
fusses over
Yep.
her own baby. So I really
Yeah.
understand. And what are some of the steps that you've taken to kind of, help yourself be in a space
Mm,
where you can hear God and still connect with Him?
mm.
Because I think
Yeah.
that's the risk, right? That we take.
Yes.
We step
Yeah.
into the risk because we think, okay, God is called me to
Mm,
kind of take a step of faith, and yet in the flux
mm.
we kind of miss Him. How
Yeah.
do you like prevent that, or what practices do
Mm.
you do?
Yeah, so for me, uh, prioritizing quiet time in the morning, in like the
Yeah,
first thing that you do after, you drop off the kids, is I have to have that quiet time, whether it is like 15 minutes to half an hour, uh, where the phone is silenced, and like I don't look at my phone, and it's just spending some time with God, and just doing my own quiet time and praying, is an absolute necessity. I do not
wow,
think I could do, yeah, I would just mentally not be even here if I didn't do that. So I think that is number one, is making sure that you always prioritize that. And then probably secondly is allowing yourself to actually rest when you need it. I think last year, especially, like last year, I think I knew I was quite conscious that I knew I was sort of burning out a little bit.
Right.
And I was tired, I was burnt out, and I knew that I was struggling a little bit. Um, and I think as an entrepreneur, you sometimes also, it's hard to give yourself permission to actually step back and
Yeah.
and take time to to actually regroup and
Yeah.
rest. And it's very hard because you have you have a team that you're
Yeah.
supporting, and if I don't design anything or I don't come up with a collection, then what's the rest of the team gonna do?
Right.
Um, but I think in that moment also when I was struggling, I remember I was praying, and I was just telling God, "God, I'm really tired, and I know I need to rest, but I don't know how."
Right.
I think I knew I needed to rest, but I just didn't know how I was going to do it, how like
Right.
logistically it was going to work.
Yeah.
And then and I think I was very comforted at that point in time. I think God kept dropping hints to me. Every sermon that I listened to, every week when I went to church and they were preaching, there's always the same theme of rest. I think like God was like
Wow.
making it so clear to me
Clear
that
to you.
that I really needed was to rest, and it was
Rest.
okay.
Wow.
And what does that mean? What I mean? It's like sitting. It's okay to sit in this uncomfortable position, like
Yeah.
feeling for a while, and just wait on God and see where He will lead, and just
Right.
trust that even if I do take the time out, or I do
Yeah.
take a couple of months out, that it's not going to hurt the business. It's not going
Right.
to, or rather, it may hurt the business on the bottom line, but God will still, you know, take care of everything. I mean, He's the one who has grown the missing piece. Actually, the
Yeah.
business belongs to Him.
Wow.
And I think it's foolish of me to think that, oh, just because I'm going to take a few months off to rest, the business
Yeah.
is going to suffer. When I think about it, say it out loud, I think it's so foolish because the business has gone to where it is, not because of me. It's really been, you know, God's blessing on the business that has grown it. So
Wow.
it's, even if I have to take some time off, which in the end of the day I did. I mean, I tore my ACL and my MCL, and I was on crutches. I had to have an operation. And in that moment, I
Wow.
think when I had the accident on the ski slopes, the actual first thought was, "Oh God, so this is how you've chosen to do it." I was praying for rest, and
Oh.
then
Was
in
this
the moment
recent?
when,
Was
yeah,
this
so I
recent?
had I had a skiing accident in December.
Oh, I'm
In
so
December,
sorry, Ling. I didn't
yeah,
know. Wow.
when I was in China. So I tore my
Wow.
ACL and my MCL, and
Oh, that
I
is
actually had,
painful.
yeah, so I had my operation in China. And I remember, like,
Oh
on the slopes,
no.
the ski instructors was like, "Oh, do we need to call, the ambulance to come?" And I was like, "Oh, no,
Oh
no, let me try first.
no.
Let me try to stand up," because it was so embarrassing. And then the minute I
Oh,
tried to stand, my
yeah.
whole body just caved. And I was like, "Oh." And then in that moment, I knew straight away, okay, it's my ACL. My ACL is gone. And then
Wow.
the next thought was like, "Oh God, so this is how you chose to do it." In a way, in a strange way, it was an answered prayer, right? Because I was asking like,
Right.
"Oh,
Right. I
how am I
understand.
gonna,
How am I going to
yeah,
rest?
how am I
How am I
gonna
going to
rest,
rest?
and
Yeah.
how am I going to?" Uh, but God gave me a very legit reason. Like, it was, I
Yeah.
physically could not move. I physically could not get around.
Right.
It was enforced rest.
Right.
For that, for those few months while I was
Wow.
recovering.
Wow.
So everything in a way kind of lined up in a funny way.
Yeah.
While resting physically, forced rest, it also caused me to have more time to, I think, rest mentally, and
Wow.
just emotionally, which in the end
Wow.
worked out.
That's so
Yeah,
good. Thank you for sharing that, Ee-Ling. I
yeah.
think being like a in a set in I mean I don't run a clothing business, but I think something similar happened to me as well. When we met
Mm,
at the coffee shop
mm,
when we were in
mm,
Singapore, when I had to go for surgery and all that. And sometimes God uses
mm.
very creative ways to speak to us.
Yes, yes.
And sometimes we wish like, God, did you really have to do it this way?
Yeah. No, and it's so funny because this is my church, church mates will always remember that this is not the
Yeah.
first time. Actually, this is the second time I've hurt my leg.
Because you
In the
broke your foot, right? You
Yes,
told
I
me.
broke my foot. Yeah, so the very first time
Mm.
I actually broke my foot, And I was on crutches for 6 months for that one. And it
Wow.
was right in the middle of Chinese New Year launch. But as a result, I had church friends who came to help me.
Yeah.
And they ended up being like, really foundational pillars in the business of subsequently. They're supposed to come and help me just for
Wow.
1 week. 1 week became 1 month. 1 month became
Wow.
1 year. And before you know it, they were like with me for 4, 6 years. So
Wow.
it's funny. It's funny how God just uses
Yeah.
this, circumstances in for his
You
purpose. Yeah.
I love how the way you have grown your business is not
Mm,
like through a blueprint, like
mm,
a 5-year plan,
mm,
10-year plan,
yeah.
which is what I think a lot of people
Mm,
would do. Rather, I've
mm,
just seen how you have allowed God's hand to just lead you, and then you've just been so flexible to yield. And then when you look back, you're always like,
mm.
oh, wow,
Oh, yeah.
it's like so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
Mm,
your faith is so childlike.
mm, mm, mm,
Yeah, it really is
mm,
childlike. Like I know every time we meet, you always say you feel like you're in a flux. Like there's so many
mm.
things going around,
Yeah.
and you don't see yourself as a peace-centered first person. But the funny
Mm,
thing is, whenever I'm with you, the spirit
mm,
that you share with me, I feel is so light. Like there's a
mm,
certain delight in it. And
mm,
on one hand, like none of us are perfect. We always want to be more rested, more of something, right? And
mm,
yet I see that perhaps it's your relationship with God
mm,
and your yieldedness to always want to see Him and His hand at work, even amidst the worst parts of your
mm,
journey, that make you
mm, mm,
so yielded to Him.
mm,
Yeah,
mhm.
and I think that's something so beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
really do believe that,
yeah,
everyone tells me that, oh, how did you get into this? Or like, how did you
yeah,
form a business? And then I always say,
yeah,
no, actually, it was not planned. It was
yeah.
was
Wow,
I was accidental in a way. It was in
right.
it was, I might always call myself an accidental entrepreneur, but
Oh,
and I
I
say I
love
do things
that.
very differently. I do
Mm-hmm.
things very differently. I don't do I haven't grown my business the way people, a lot of business people would probably say that I have could do so much more, could do so much better,
Right.
but I've always done it in a way that works for me, works for my team. And also
Yeah,
because we want to employ women, we employ women also um who either have come out of being, a stay-at-home mom for a very long time,
I
or
love
want to
that.
employ women who still want flexibility and want to work around their kids. I mean, that's how I
Yeah,
started. So I want to be able to still be able to support women who want that. Uh,
yeah. I
so I
love
mean,
that.
yeah, it's not maybe not the most efficient manner of
Right.
running a business, but it's how the missing piece, runs. Yeah.
Started. Oh, actually, you
Mm.
haven't explained to our listeners why it's called the missing piece.
Ah,
I always assumed that the missing piece referred to this gap,
yes.
at the waist of some of your clothes, but I discovered it
Yeah.
wasn't. Tell
No,
us.
it's not. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I first started the brand, we were primarily doing kids clothing and coordinated clothing for the whole family. So I came up
Yeah.
with the name "The Missing Piece" was because
Mhm.
and the idea that every family member is the missing piece that forms the unit, the whole unit.
Wow. Oh, I love
Um,
it.
yeah, and it's only years later when we came up with the cutout cheongsam that
Mhm.
I mean, okay lah, the name stuck and the name worked, with the cutouts. But
Wow.
actually it was at that point in time nothing to do with the cutouts. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you
so
for
even
sharing
the
that,
name.
Eileen.
So I really feel, like even the
Yeah.
name, coming up with the name at that point in time,
Mm.
and subsequently this random design that who would I never thought would be our signature, like
Yeah.
even now, all of that was, I mean, is beyond my
Wow.
orchestration. I do think
That
that
is
all of that
incredible.
was God led. Yeah.
That is incredible. That is incredible.
Yeah.
And how do you keep your faith? How do you keep so grounded amidst
Mm.
all these pressures to perform or to succeed? Because especially in the fashion industry, like you've
Yeah.
mentioned a couple of times, I could. Other people do this and I would
Mm.
have been. Like I hear you mention
Mm.
this a couple of times. So how do you ground yourself to tell
Mm.
yourself that, in spite of all the pressures to succeed or to do more, that you've
Yeah.
decided to hold back? Because that
Mm.
takes greater wisdom and greater
Mm.
self-restraint, actually.
Mm. I think
Right.
it hasn't been easy. So I mean, there are times where I do feel tempted, to take on more than I can chew. But when I think I do have the habit of waiting on the Lord. So if I have an
Right.
idea or an opportunity, nowadays, even for designs
Yeah.
or like choosing my prints, I won't make the decision straight away. I will
Mm.
always sit on it for a while, soak in it, and then I'll just wait and see when where the Lord leads me. Even
Right.
whether it's after a period of time, whether it's something that is still on my heart or still on my mind, or God will start to place doubts or saying like, I don't think this is wise. I don't think you should do this.
Right.
So in general, I don't answer straight away. For most things, most opportunities in for designs now. So I'm a lot more uh curated in that sense. I wait for God's curation. It's like, oh, do I sit on it? And then I just think whether that is really something that I want to put into production.
Right.
So I think it's a lot of it is like I've gotten into the habit of waiting.
Yeah.
Um, Waiting and seeing, how God will lead or how God will prompt me.
Oh, I love that.
And then also, I mean, I also tell people that for me, my family has always been first, and that has always been my top priority. So
Wow.
that for me is quite easy. If that is a guy, will this affect my family? If it does, then straight away the answer, that one I don't even wait. That one will be a
Wow.
straight out no. So I think always going back also to what works for me and what works for my family. And then
Right.
also now, over the years, I think the core
Mm-hmm.
values of the company have also
Mm.
been quite well established. And
Yeah.
and when I look back also and I think, okay, this decision that I'm going to make or this opportunity, will it continue to strengthen, one of our core values? Is it in line with, the core values of the brand? If it doesn't, then it's easy. Um,
Wow.
yeah. So I
That that
think, yeah,
that is such a deep, deep thought for all of us to chew on. Like this whole idea of waiting on God. Like who would think that you need to wait on
yeah.
God about launching
Mm,
into a new design or something like that?
mm,
But it seems
mm,
to me like you put your work almost as like a way of
mm,
worship.
mm,
I mean, you're not
mm,
singing, but
mm,
it's
mm,
almost like every curation, every piece that you put out, you're allowing God to curate it, like what you share.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also like I always tell my team also that every year I go through this self reflection. At the end of the year, I tend to go, oh, is this God, do you want to continue? Is this what you want me to continue to do?
Yeah.
And also, why am I doing this?
Right.
Or like, is what I'm doing really impactful? Always
Hmm.
every year I'll go through at least one time. I think this,
Right.
this whole reflection process about what we're doing, and a lot of the time, I think, uh, you know. God has reminded me why He's blessed us with the missing piece, why He has grown it to this stage, and it reminds me that He has grown it to really be an amazing community. Like I
Mm.
would have never dreamt that starting a fashion business could actually grow this amazing community of women who are like-minded. They're so supportive. We're
Yeah.
inclusive, and we're just women who want to help each other build confidence.
Yeah.
And
I
we've
feel
really
that.
built,
I sense that
yeah,
in your shop.
and it's,
Yeah.
it's really built a really nice community, which when I think back on is it's God's gift, God's gift
Wow.
to us. And I feel very blessed that the
Wow.
missing piece is what I always get rebuked that if I think like, oh, if you are having doubts about all this, or you seem like, oh, when I look at the numbers, well, we're not growing
Right.
anymore like we used to in the past few years. It's much harder now to close the sales. And I'll be like, oh, like smack myself, because this is not why the missing piece has existed, right? We have built an amazing community. We are here to continue to facilitate, women meeting other women and encouraging other women, and being able to build their confidence. So I always tell my team, we are
Wow.
not here in the business of selling clothes. That's not what we
Wow.
are here about. Right? The missing piece here, we are here to build confidence, and we are in the business of confidence building, and it's not about selling clothes. And I think also
Wow.
that's in the fashion industry is very competitive. And I
Wow.
think,
Yeah,
for
yeah. I
us,
can
yeah,
imagine.
yes. And so being 9 years in, is, we are not the new fresh it brand anymore.
I hear
It takes,
you.
yeah, it takes a lot more effort to still stay relevant, to still
Yeah,
stay
yeah.
fresh.
For
And then
sure.
for us, I mean, for every entrepreneur, every designer, you're only as
Mhm.
good as your last collection, right? And you always want to
Oh,
set the bar
wow.
even higher. Like,
Higher.
yeah, for me, it's very hard to satisfy me. I'm the biggest critic is probably me. Like, for a design for me to say yes to a design
Wow.
is quite tough. And I know there have definitely been collections where they've been filled with pieces where I'm not super proud of, or not
Right,
pieces
right.
that I absolutely love, but they are there because I needed to put out a collection.
Yeah.
But I really want to avoid that. I really want to be able to produce pieces which I feel really work for women, and really sets the bar even higher, and had really a lot of thought go into it.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love that you think so much through each piece. And I think that's why,
Mm,
at the time of this recording, I'm actually preparing for my first stand-up comedy. And when you gifted me a piece for my debut,
mm,
I think I just cried. Actually, when you texted me to
mm,
say that you wanted to gift it to me, I cried
mm,
because while I feel so much of your heart is to gift women confidence,
mm,
it also made me realize that, like you said, the word that you used was armor. You said, I'm so
mm,
happy to see you wearing it like an armor.
mm, mm.
And
Yeah.
so I just want to say thank you, not just maybe for myself, but I'm sure there are so
Yeah.
many women out there who feel like,
Mm,
your clothes bring them so much more than just a piece for today. But when
yeah.
I received that text when you said that I want to give this to you for your debut, I cried because I felt like God was telling me like, okay, this is serious now. Now you gotta go out and like actually start preparing for it. It's not a thought anymore. You actually have
Mm,
to work for it and make it
mm,
materialize now.
mm,
And I think you gifted to me a part of that
mm,
spirit that is in you and that you so evidently display, which is
mm,
to really give your best in everything.
mm,
Yeah.
mm,
And if there's
mm,
one thing I like to close our conversation with is that, all of us, we all talk about this whole thing about, how to balance, how to juggle, how to be a good and present parent. But could you tell us, Ee-Ling, like, what does that mean? Because for so
mm.
many of us, I think we carry this guilt. I'm doing stuff
Yeah.
here in Tanzania as well. And then I think to myself, I would like to think that I prioritize my kids. Like I send them to
Mm,
school, I pick them up.
yeah.
When they step into the house, I make sure that I'm home most
Mm,
of the
mm,
time.
yeah.
But are those really markers of how present we are for our kids? And
Mm, mm,
are there markers that you use for yourself? Because I think all of us have to find our own markers. There's no right or wrong way
yeah.
of being a
Mm,
present parent. But for
yeah.
you, when is it? Because I know that when I was running a
Mm,
nonprofit actively in Singapore,
mm,
sometimes those lines got really blurred. And
mm,
my husband Cliff would have to remind me. He would say, "You're really overstepping now. It's getting grey."
mm,
Yeah,
mm, mm, mm.
yeah,
Oh, I mean, all women who are having to multitask, right? And when we
mm-hmm.
set up a business, or even when we're working and having a job, we're trying to juggle family. We're expected to just still juggle family,
Yeah,
despite having taking on other responsibilities.
yeah.
I mean, I think God can see your heart. I don't think God can see your heart.
Right.
I'm by no means a perfect parent. I think, in fact, somebody asked me what is it that your kids have taught you through the years, and I said they've
Oh,
taught me that I actually have many weaknesses. I have many
wow.
weaknesses.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of refining that I need to go through.
Mm,
But I think one is that you must genuinely want the best for your kids. And I think God, when He sees that and He sees your heart,
mm.
He will help you. Even if you're not physically present at that point in time, God will look after your children. Right.
Wow.
And also for me, I mean, another practical side of things is that, so it's very similar, right? I run my business where I still do the kids pickups. I think that, if I can still pick up my kids from school, I still am at home in the afternoons with them. I take them through their homework, their exam prep, all these things that makes me a present parent. But I realize and one thing I've tried to keep with is also at night, to still put them to bed. So even now, even though they're quite old, like my husband and I
Wow.
would still put our kids to bed. Um, physically, whether it's to spend time, tuck them in, or like to have quiet time with them and then pray with them before they go to bed. Even if the day has been super busy, I noticed that my kids will always open up a little bit more just before bedtime. That when they're a bit more
Yeah.
relaxed, Yeah, when they're a
I
bit more
agree.
relaxed.
Yeah. The last thing is the most
Mm.
important thing.
Yeah. And now for me, I always try to consciously
Yeah.
leave my phone. So I'll constantly leave my phone upstairs.
Yeah.
I try to leave my phone
Wow.
upstairs when I go put the kids down to bed so that I can really be there and really be
Wow.
present with them when they're sharing something and that I'm not distracted. I think
Wow.
the phone is really not helpful in that department.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wow, I love how we are actually closing on this note because actually throughout our whole interview, I can hear your phone buzzing. Usually I would tell my guests to switch it off, but I actually let it go because I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is actually really showcases how busy you actually are. And for us to close on this note that, wow, you are so intentional about putting your phone away, like physically away for your kids.
Yeah.
I think that speaks loudly of the person and the woman that
Mm.
you are. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank you, Ee-Ling. Thank you for being so humble. I think something that, I've really taken away is that your humility. I think so many of us want to do great things for God. And I'm sure there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs who might be stay-at-home parents who are listening to this podcast wondering, how can I take the next step? And I think one thing that you've shown all of us today is how let God guide. Because sometimes we run ahead of ourselves. Sometimes we want to push out a product that hasn't been tested, hasn't been tried, has no feedback, and yet we still think, I really want to do this and make it grow. But you are the opposite. You didn't have a plan. You didn't have a I want to. You just followed where God opened the doors. And I think that speaks so much of humility. So thank you so much, Ee-Ling. It was such a privilege and honor to have you today.
Oh, I
Yeah.
thank you. I always love
Yeah.
catching up with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Friend, I hope this conversation blessed you. If you know an ordinary Christian with extraordinary faith whom you'd love to hear me interview, or if that person's you, please let me know. Just drop me a note at hello@kitedreams.org. Be blessed.